Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a fascinating topic that affects every single one of us, even if we don't realize it, the US dollar. You might think it's just a piece of paper with numbers on it, but it's so much more. The US dollar plays an enormous role in shaping the global economy, but its dominance is increasingly being challenged. What does this mean for us? Stick around because today we're uncovering 7 surprising facts about the future of the US dollar you'll definitely want to know.
Join me as we break it all down!
1. The US dollar wasn't always this powerful. Let's start with some history. The US dollar didn't just magically become the king of global currencies. Its journey started back in 1944 with the Bretton Woods Agreement. This was when the world's major economies agreed to peg their currencies to the US dollar, which in turn was tied to gold. Sounds rock solid, right? Well, fast forward to the 1970s, and the US severed this link to gold, making the dollar a fiat currency, meaning its value wasn't backed by physical assets anymore. But here's the thing, it still ruled the global financial system. Why? Trust. Nations believed in the US economy's strength and stability. Plus, let's not forget about the PetroDollar system. Oil was traded exclusively in dollars, making other countries dependent on it. But here's the catch. This dominance wasn't built to last forever. Let's dive into some reasons why the dollar isn't as invincible as it once seemed. 2. BRICS nations are breaking the rules. Have you heard of BRICS? It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries are the rising stars of the global economy, and they're not playing by the same old rules anymore. A huge part of their strategy is moving away from the US dollar. Instead of relying on the dollar for trade, these nations are trading in their own currencies. For example, China has been using the yuan for many of its international transactions, including oil trades with Russia. They've even established something called the New Development Bank, designed as an alternative to institutions like the IMF, which heavily rely on, yep, you guessed it, the US dollar. This move by BRICS has massive implications. By working outside the dollar's shadow, these nations are weakening its grip on global trade, signaling a major power shift. Stick with me, because the next point will blow your mind. 3. The petrodollar is starting to crack. Let me ask you something. What's the one thing the entire global economy has relied on for decades? Oil. And for a long time, the petrodollar system ensured that all oil trades were conducted in, you guessed it, US dollars. But here's where things get interesting. Countries like Russia and Iran have already started selling oil in other currencies, such as the Chinese yuan. And with the world's increasing focus on renewable energy, demand for oil could drop altogether. If oil demand falls, the petrodollar system could collapse, meaning one less reason for countries to hold on to dollars. This isn't just a theory, it's already happening. And as oil becomes less critical and alternative currencies rise, the dominance of the dollar starts to crack. Don't go anywhere because it gets even more interesting when we bring history into the mix. 4. History proves currencies change. Did you know the US dollar wasn't always the world's dominant currency? Before the dollar, the British pound reigned supreme. For over a century, the pound was the go-to reserve currency for global trade and finance. But after World War II and the rise of the US as a global superpower, the dollar gradually replaced it. The key word here? Gradually. These kinds of transitions don't happen overnight. In fact, even as the US dollar faces challenges today, experts agree that it could take decades for another currency, or group of currencies, to truly replace it. What does this mean for us? Well, while the dollar still has a stronghold for now, the growing competition from alternative currencies, like the euro, the Chinese yuan, and even cryptocurrencies, is becoming harder to ignore. Speaking of which, let's jump into an exciting new development in global finance. 5. Cryptocurrencies could change everything. Now this is where things get bold. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum are designed to run on decentralized systems. Unlike regular money, they aren't controlled by any government or central bank. Sounds futuristic, right? But here's why it matters. Some experts believe cryptocurrencies could eventually challenge the dominance of traditional reserve currencies, including the US dollar. Imagine a world where countries use blockchain-based currencies for trade instead of swapping dollars. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. In fact, countries like El Salvador have already declared Bitcoin as legal tender, and more nations are exploring central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. These moves could pave the way for a financial system that doesn't depend on a single dominant player like the US dollar. It's an exciting thought, but also a little scary. Let me know what you think in the comments. 6. A declining dollar could create instability. Alright, so we've covered the challenges to the dollar, but now let's talk about the consequences. If the dollar loses its top spot, what happens to the economy? For starters, instability. Countries that depend on the US dollar for trade, debt, or savings could face some serious problems. For example, many developing nations borrow money in dollars. If the dollar's value drops or fluctuates wildly, these economies could suffer massive inflation or even default on their loans. And it's not just developing countries. Global markets could see huge disruptions, affecting everything from interest rates to trade flows. But here's the flip side. A declining dollar could also open doors to a more balanced financial system. We could see a world with multiple reserve currencies, spreading risks and encouraging fairer trade. It's a double-edged sword, and the outcome really depends on how nations handle the transition. But wait, because there's one last surprising fact that might just redefine everything we've talked about so far. 7. The future might be multipolar. This point is the game changer. What if instead of one dominant global currency, we see the rise of a multipolar system? Imagine a world where the US dollar, the euro, the Chinese yuan, and even digital currencies all play significant roles in global finance. Sounds crazy? Not really. This kind of system would be much more diversified, reducing the reliance on any single currency. For nations, this could mean greater flexibility and less vulnerability to currency-based economic shocks. But let's not sugarcoat it. Managing such complexity would require serious coordination between global financial institutions, and history has shown us that this is no easy task. Still, the idea of a multipolar world is pretty exciting, especially for countries looking to escape the dollar's dominance. It's not guaranteed, but it's a strong possibility and definitely something to keep an eye on. In summary, what does this all mean? So where does all this leave us? Let's recap. The US dollar's dominance isn't disappearing tomorrow, but its foundations are being challenged. Emerging powers like the BRICS nations are creating alternatives to the dollar and defying old trade norms. The global shift to renewable energy is unraveling the PetroDollar system, while cryptocurrencies are laying the groundwork for an entirely different kind of financial system. While a declining dollar might bring instability, it also opens the door to innovation, a more balanced financial system, and exciting new opportunities. Whether you see these changes as exciting or concerning, there's no denying one thing. The global financial landscape is shifting, and the age of absolute US dollar dominance might be over. Your turn. What do you think? All right, now I want to hear from you. Do you think the US dollar's dominance is here to stay? Are cryptocurrencies the future of finance? Or is the world moving toward a multipolar currency system? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll be reading and responding to as many as I can. And as always, if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.